They came at sunrise, four black SUVs rolling slowed down my gravel drive, looking like a funeral procession for common sense. Right behind them, a flatbed tow truck and a white van with a gold crest. Maple Ridge Homeowners Association Compliance Division, like they were some kind of royal guards. That van still had mud on the tires from last week's rain, and the woman who climbed out wore a blazer so sharp you could cut fence wire on the lapels. "Mr. Carter," she called, voice too sweet to trust. "By order of the Maple Ridge HOA, we are taking possession of this property today." You ever had one of those moments where you don't yell, you don't fight, you just do what you spent all those late nights quietly preparing for? That was me. I popped open the red toolbox on my porch, pressed the rubber button hidden under the handle, and whispered, "Thunderbolt, Stage 1. Suddenly, the old fence line blinked with blue LEDs. Little cameras woke up and spun like sunflowers, and Ranger, my chocolate lab, went to his post at the gate, just like we practiced 100 times, just in case. I never planned to actually use any of it. I hoped I'd never have to. But the day someone tries to take your land without a fair fight, you learn hope is for spring mornings. Preparation is for mornings like this. The woman, Cheryl Whitman, though I'd learned to call her Miss Stiff Smile, cocked her head when the cameras powered up. "Sir, please cooperate." I just said, "Ma'am, you step over that gate without lawful authority. Every second is on the record, mirrored straight to the county, the state, and a judge." She tried to look like she owned the sunrise. Her people spread out, pulling out clipboards, glancing at their radios. That's when the white van slid open. Four guys in matching polos hopped out with bolt cutters, and a tow truck revved behind them. Ranger growled, and for a second, I wondered if any of them realized what a farm means out here. How every inch is memory, sweat, and a promise to the people who handed you the keys. Let me back up a sec. Folks call me Dan Carter, or just Dan. Grew up smelling hay and diesel, joined the Army at 18, spent 12 years keeping radios running so other folks could make it home. Came back, bought myself 23 acres outside Maple Ridge, Indiana, just off the big highway. Built a white farmhouse with a porch wide enough for bad weather and good company. My dog's best at frisbees and guarding socks under the couch. He also guards my heart. I keep to myself, fix what breaks, help my neighbor Mrs. Thompson with her mower when it acts up, and leave out a box of free eggs every Saturday. Kindness is a crop too, my grandma used to say. You plant it, water it, and hope it spreads. But all that changed the day that shiny flyer showed up in my mailbox. "Welcome to Maple Ridge, a premier HOA community." Big houses, tiny trees, all green carpet lawns, and a map that had my land. A big rectangle, right next to their curvy streets. Turns out, the developer was annexing adjacent parcels for uniform standards. The kid at their office, all white teeth and nervous energy, handed me a binder thick as a phone book. Covenants, applications, everything but a handshake. "You'll need approval to continue existing uses," he chirped. I was outside their boundary. "For now," he smiled. That's the kind of smile a fox gives a hen. So I read every page. Old Army habit. The rules were a web. Paint colors, mailbox heights, no agricultural activity, no clotheslines, no outbuildings unless you beg and pay. Farms, not welcome. But then at the county recorder's office, I found out they'd filed an annexation petition that nudged the property line over 50 feet. Just enough to steal my well and my bridge. That's not just a mistake, that's a strategy. So I found a lawyer, Ms. Barnes, Boots knows land. We'll fight it. Keep records, be kind in public, document in private. So I set up Thunderbolt, cameras, off-site backups, measured every fence line with a surveyor friend, mirrored hard drives in the barn, copies of every deed in a fire safe. I even left donuts and a note at the HOA office the next time they flagged my fence. Wrong yard. Enjoy breakfast anyway. But kindness does not mean surrender. Their next letter was glossy. Emergency community action, immediate possession. Court case number, all the trappings. My hands shook reading it. Fear isn't weakness, it's your body asking for a plan. Ms. Barnes checked it. A petition, not an order. Until there's a real judge's signature, nobody takes anything. She said, "You document, you insist on law, you call me." So I did. And then, 2 mornings later, they came like a circus. SUVs, van, tow truck, the works. Metal in the air, tension like before a thunderstorm. Ms. Whitman out front, paperwork like a weapon. Final notice. Today we take possession. I said, may I see your court order? She held up a fancy flyer. I laughed, friendly. That's not a court order. That's letterhead. She didn't flinch. The bolt cutter boys started moving. That's when Thunderbolt kicked up to stage 2. Cameras, locks, announcements. This property is under audio and video recording. Please state your authority. The men hesitated. Ranger stood at his spot, tail stiff, eyes steady. Last chance, I said quietly. Proceed, she said, smiling that same stiff smile. My old Ford truck, my grandpa's, sat by the barn. If they hauled that off, they'd be hauling away more than metal. My radio pinged. A deputy's cruiser creeping down the back lane. I stepped forward, calm but loud. Any unauthorized removal of property is recorded and mirrored off-site. Please state your authority. The deputy stepped out, hand on his radio. What's going on here? Whitman said, emergency action. I said, requesting law to verify a court order. They have none. The deputy took the flyer, frowned. This isn't a court order. This is a flyer. I handed him a packet. Deeds, surveys, Ms. Barnes's letter, one-page summary. No consent, no court order, no entry. The porch speakers played. Please step back. The sheriff has been notified. For a second, I thought maybe that would be enough. But then a little boy on a bike, helmet flashing red, rolled up with his sister on a pink scooter. Mom, are they taking the farmer's house? I jogged over with a carton of eggs, gave it to the kids. Free eggs for good neighbors. Kindness is not weakness, it's a flag. The deputy's jaw softened. Let's take a breath, folks. Tow driver, shut it down. Miss Whitman's smile cracked. Pierce, the HOA lawyer, arrived in a suit and started arguing covenants. The deputy shut him down. You have a right to go find a judge. But then the radio buzzed again. Water usage violation tied to your well permit. Next minute, a yellow bulldozer with Maple Ridge Development Site Services turned down my gravel lane, blade up, heading for my bridge. That bridge, my bridge, spanned the creek since before I bought the land. Without it, my farm breaks in two. I moved, slow as you please, boots crunching gravel. Thunderbolt, record bridge approach. Cameras zoomed, audio rolling. Ma'am, I called to Whitman, that's my bridge. Your equipment is crossing my line. The bulldozer paused, then its blade dropped with a clank. It's a safety improvement, she lied. I pointed at my survey stake. This is the line. The deputy barked, dozer, stop. The blade paused, inches from my bridge. For a second, everyone held their breath, but the machine finally backed off. That's when the process server showed up, sweating, tie askew, stack of papers in hand. Service of process, emergency temporary restraining order, Maple Ridge HOA versus Daniel Carter. The deputy grabbed the top sheet, read it, swore under his breath. This one's signed. Court says you can't alter or interfere with contested infrastructure pending a hearing in 72 hours. Unsafe structures, it said. Pierce grinned. The bridge. The deputy muttered. Judge will want photos, reports, maybe an engineer. I said, I'll get Tom from the county. I'll get my old sergeant if I need him. Then the bulldozer driver, looking more sorry than tough, blocked the bridge with orange plastic fence on their side of the line. It wasn't victory, but it wasn't total loss. Neighbors began drifting in. Caleb, the firefighter, dropped off cookies. Mrs. Thompson arrived with her cane and a jar of peach jam. The little girl put a smile sticker on my gate. Even Whitman's mask slipped for a second when she saw the kids giggling. Kindness plants roots even in the hardest ground. But the fight wasn't over. County trucks rumbled up. Linemen came to pull my well's power. The work order was bogus, requested by Whitman C., and not signed by any judge. The deputy backed me. HOA isn't your customer on this meter. The lineman, decent sort, said, I'll call my supervisor for clarity. Just then, a convoy of county trucks pulled in, recorder's office, surveyor, and Ms. Barnes's battered green pickup, dust flying. She jumped out, folder under her arm, boots crunching. Nobody cut anything, she barked. Judge wants a video call on site in 10 minutes. My cameras blinked. The air went electric. Suddenly, the bulldozer, maybe out of frustration or maybe on orders, shoved its blade into the dirt. The old bridge groaned. Then, with a crack, the far end dipped, planks breaking loose, tumbling into the creek. My heart snapped right along with it. Every memory that bridge held, gone in a blink. The crowd gasped. The deputy yelled, "Shut it down." Mrs. Thompson swung her cane at the dozer driver. "You've broken more than wood, young man." The kids cried. Ms. Barnes handed the judge's call to the deputy. On video, Judge Ramirez's voice was steel. "What in God's name is going on?" He listened, scowled, then finally said, "Temporary restraining order. No more HOA action. No machines, no fences, no tow trucks." The world stood still for a breath. Relief and anger tangled up in my chest. But chaos wasn't done. The HOA filed a second petition, eminent domain. The words hit harder than a bulldozer. Ms. Barnes snapped. "Only governments have that, not HOAs." Pierce, smooth as ever, said, "Your land is essential to community harmony." I said, "A check doesn't buy back a life." The deputy backed me. Not without a judge and a lot more than some developer paperwork. Neighbors rallied. "No paper pushers are taking my neighbor's land," Mrs. Thompson barked. The lineman agreed to file an honest report. For a moment, kindness won around. But then the bridge, already hurt, collapsed the rest of the way, boards tumbling down the creek. Kids screamed. Ranger barked. My world tilted. That should have been the end. But just as silence started to fall, a radio barked. Phase 2. Proceed to the barn. My barn. The heart of the farm, my tools, my bees, everything that made this land home. I stepped in the bulldozer's path, voice low and shaking. Nobody touches that barn. The crowd grew louder, neighbors and strangers alike. Caleb started live streaming. "Folks, you're seeing this in real time." Mrs. Thompson threatened to camp on the barn roof. Even the kids started chanting, "Save the barn! Save the barn!" Suddenly, the protest arrived. 50 people, some waving, "Protect our property values," others yelling, "Leave the farmer alone." Two crowds, two sides, same street. But then Dr. Whitman, HOA president's own husband, stepped forward. "Cheryl, you're destroying the community, not protecting it." His words cut deep. The crowd shifted. Pierce wasn't finished. He called in state inspectors, who snapped photos, called my bees an unpermitted agricultural hazard. But the bees, disturbed by all the shouting, lifted in a golden swarm and sent the suits scattering, the air buzzing like a living storm. And that's where you find us, standing in the shade of a busted bridge, barn still safe, neighbors split, but not broken. My heart is battered, my land's been hurt, but I'm still here, standing my line, not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever had a place that mattered. That's the trouble with power. Sometimes it thinks paperwork can beat people. But out here, people still matter, and kindness is still the toughest crop you can grow. So where are you watching from? Because I promise you, this story isn't finished. And I want to know, do you believe the law should bend for convenience? Or should it hold when a neighbor stands their ground? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own story if you've ever faced down a bully, HOA or otherwise. And if you think this farm, or any farm, is worth fighting for, well, you know where to find me.